The style of an author should be the image of his mind, but the choice and command of language is the fruit of exercise. Wise words from 1700s English essayist Edward Gibbons, aka this guy. So, human expression. Human expression is an expression that can take various forms, such as photography, dance, even music. A very popular form of human expression actually includes writing. As someone who sees writing as an outlet for my thoughts and ideas, I have, over the years, developed my own process on the matter. My process of writing begins with understanding what message I'm meant to communicate to the reader. Once I've gained an understanding, I start brainstorming how to properly portray my ideas in an understandable way. I write down my thoughts as soon as I think them, regardless if they are in order. After writing down what's important, I make sure I'm not missing anything required. Should there be anything that I wrote that I deem is not important, I simply just scrap the idea. This concept actually has different outcomes for my writing. For example, sometimes the conclusion is the first thing I write and the introduction is my last. Moving on to the next stage, I look over all of my scrambled thoughts and start the attempt of putting them in an order that makes the most sense. Think of it like putting the pieces of a puzzle together. Boom! First draft, complete. If I see that I'm lacking text in one of my paragraphs, I just fill in the blanks with sentences further explaining my already written concepts. And second draft, complete. I look over my second draft and check if I need any revisions. This stage is a very crucial exercise in my refinement. I said right, Edward Gibbons. Now, I read my writing aloud to see if it all flows. Kind of like how I'm doing it right now. Last step to my process. The last thing I do in my writing process is have it looked over by multiple people because I need get some feedback. I take any feedback into consideration and make my final touches. Ladies and gentlemen, last draft, complete. The connection that I have with my process of writing is pretty simple. It's simply one that just came easiest to me. See, since the 4th grade, I've had this specific blueprint of writing a rough draft practically drilled into me by school. Trigger warning, 3, 2, 1. This thing. I cry just looking at it. See, this is what numerous of my teachers claimed a first rough draft should look like. Almost perfectly structured with full body paragraphs and a completed intro and conclusion. I mean, did they forget the rough in rough draft? This structure had me very frustrated and caused my final drafts not to be up to its full potential. When I started writing how I wanted to, I found that my works came to me way more naturally. Following my own writing process, I no longer struggle and even feel like I properly convey what I'm trying to express. I don't face any pressure with getting my final draft on the first or second try, instead getting there steadily with my own process. Alright, remember those teachers I mentioned? Let's go back to that. When I'd expressed to my teachers my own preference of writing, they told me that my method was messy, time-wasting, and simply unnecessary. For forever, I considered these comments to be true. I had this mindset that my way was just wrong. It wasn't until I'd conducted a theory of writing research project that my mindset shifted. The research I conducted was the following. How effective is reading your rough draft aloud? What are the benefits to writing your thoughts as soon as you think them? And is having multiple rough drafts useful? Now, I know, you might be thinking, what's the point of reading my rough draft out loud when I can read it in my head? Well, according to the University of North Carolina's Writing Center, it can actually be very effective. Our mind tends to not catch written incorrections, instead correcting it. By reading aloud, we are able to catch mistakes such as run-on sentences or any repetition. We're able to notice if a sentence sounds out of place or doesn't flow just by listening to it be said out loud. Also, hearing a rough draft out loud can help ensure that you've met your intended tone of your essay. During my research, I looked into the process of writing your thoughts the second you think of them, even if they're not in order. Does it really affect one's writing? Why can't I write it down later? Berkeley Student Learning Center, a website made by the University of UC Berkeley, offers services and resources for numerous professions, including writing. Dr. Rochelle Venuto is the director of the writing program. She states that while brainstorming, allowing yourself to write your ideas, even if out of order, can actually result in a more creative outcome through your theme, topic, etc. And by doing so, you reduce the likelihood of losing your train of thought or losing the idea entirely. Save the idea in your draft and elaborate on it later. Now for the final research question. How useful is it really to have multiple rough drafts? Isn't it so much easier to just have one, maybe two? Believe me, I get the questions. In hindsight, it does sound quicker to just have only 2 rough drafts. The funny thing is, how many rough drafts you should have solely depends on you, the writer. Whether you only need 2 or 10 to produce a well-written essay is all up to you and your own personal process. There is no wrong amount of rough drafts, though I would argue that more than one is definitely effective. Dr. Catherine Firth, who earned a PhD in English Literature from Oxford University, states the enhancements of having multiple rough drafts on her personal blog, Research Insiders. In it, she explains that by having multiple rough drafts, the chances of missing any important information is decreased. Dr. Firth further explains that by attempting to have less rough drafts, you could potentially skip a draft stage, resulting in you storing said draft in your head. This, she says, is way more of an effort and even slower process compared to simply writing it down on paper. I'd conducted this research with the intention of improving my process of writing, waiting for these resources to call my methods sloppy and in need of change. However, with the information I learned about the positive effects my process can have on my writing efficiency, instead of changing my process, I choose to embrace it. The theory of writing is something that is personal, and each writer has their own approach to it. What works for one person might not work for another. However, keep an open mind. Don't be scared to experiment with your process or try different strategies to see the result it produces in your writing. I found my way of writing that works best for me. Go and discover yours too.